A huge gust came, hit the boat, the main slashed over.
All of a sudden, this thunder system rolling over the mountain here. It came down straight out of the north and basically hit the boat wing on wing, flipped the main back over and buried the rails.
You're joining us in this remote fjord, cutting deep into the heart of the Pacific coastal mountain range. This crater-like anchorage is the only safe refuge in this 100-kilometer canyon, carved out by glaciers of the last ice age, lined with towering snow-crowned peaks and massive ice fields. The mountains here generate their own unique weather systems, making sailing around these parts a little dicey. And although we journeyed up here during a period of stable conditions, we've learned that when sailing into the mountains, you have to be prepared and ready for anything. It's been fun scrambling around these rocks here. It's very subalpine terrain. You can definitely tell that in the winter, the wind rips through here. It would get that Arctic outflow. You can see that huge debris, deadheads, giant logs have been washed up on the beach on the southern side of this anchorage. And then also that the trees are so windswept. It reminds me so much of the terrain in Newfoundland or any sort of subalpine environment, but we're at sea level. So yeah, definitely a harsh environment in the winter. Would not want to be sailing up here then, or if you were, you'd be one tough.
You want to really check the weather carefully.
Yeah, but it's beautiful here now. True to the summer weather patterns, it was completely calm overnight, so we weren't too worried. We slept really well and had full trust in the stern tie anchor situation. Definitely a good stopping off point when you're traveling up Burke Channel.
Yeah, otherwise it's a whole nearly 70-mile slog to do in one day.
Yeah, so it's a lot.
It's nice to break it up into 30-mile chunks. Mm-hmm. I was really anxious this morning when I woke up, thinking that it was just going to be steady headwinds the rest of the 30 miles up the inlet, and that would make the going really hard. But I am delighted to see that it has turned right around, and we have a lovely little inflow breeze again.
Yeah, so it should be a very similar day to yesterday. We sailed from Kissimmee Bay all the way up here to Cathedral Point, so it was about 30 nautical miles. And it was perfect downwind sailing the entire day. We were not expecting that. So go and check that video out because that one was phenomenal. But yeah, so we're halfway up the inlet and we're going to continue on today.
Yep, I think we're going to go to South Bentnick Arm and maybe go explore and see if we can't find some hot springs down there. So it's another 30 nautical miles. So if we get going, it's now before midday, around 10 o'clock in the morning. We should get there for dinner time, I reckon. So getting out of stern tie situations is always a little bit fun because at the moment we're pulled really hard on the stern tie. So as soon as we cut it loose, the boat's going to start to swing out across the bay. So I'm going to untie it. We'll put the dinghy in the water ready to go. I'll try to hang onto the boat and see if I can hold it. And if I can, I'll bring it down here. We'll jump in the dinghy, pull ourselves back and bring in the anchor rode before we swing into the other shore. We're going to fall off to starboard here. You let me travel down a little bit, please. Well, we're back under sail, sailing downwind at 3.2 knots. The big rock formation just up the channel here is called Gibraltar Point, I believe because it kind of resembles the rocks of Gibraltar, which is pretty cool. It's a big granite face that comes right down to sea level and looks absolutely phenomenal. Generally, you only see things like that above 1,000 meters up in the Alpine, so it's really cool to see such a huge granite slab just come right down to sea level. And I imagine that below the ocean, it just continues going down 1,000 feet to the bottom of the inlet. Almost 4 knots.
These granite cliffs are so spectacular. You usually have to get up pretty high into the Alpine to see rock formations like this. Just so steep, plummeting into the ocean. It's just super dramatic to see them just at the water's edge. And this was all carved out by glaciers thousands and thousands of years ago. Really, when you think about it, what we're looking at is the tops of the mountains, and they go for another 1,000 meters below the ocean. So we don't even know how deep it is here. Our depth sounder is off the chart, so it's probably more than 1,000 meters. It just goes straight down. Some big mountains.
So we just hit 5 knots, which is aces. Not expecting to travel downwind this fast today, but I freaking love it. I was just having a fun little thought contrast of all of the crazy forces involved in carving out this inlet with a glacier and the erosion of the earth and all of that big, powerful physical forces. And yet here we are, sailing downwind in a casual 10 knots of breeze on a beautiful sunny day. Just what a crazy juxtaposition of like environmental forces. Really fun to think about. Anyway, that's one of the things I keep my mind interested in whilst sailing. I am slowly getting burnt on one side of my body because yesterday all the sun was over here and today all the sun is over here, so I have like a one-side tan. It's not like farmer's tan, it's kind of like a trucker's tan when you have one arm out the window and it's always burnt and the other one's white.
You need a bigger hat.
Yeah, probably need a bigger hat. And some linen long sleeves or something. Stoked to be doing such a great speed, 4.5, 5 knots. We're only just coming through slack at the moment and it's turning to a flood, so the current will be going with us in the next couple of hours. So hopefully we'll be even making better ground, which is phenomenal. What a lovely, lovely sail up this channel. Burke Channel, would recommend. Some of the most dramatic scenery I've seen in the BC coast.
We are careening along right now at an average of 6 knots speed over ground. We've been surfing some waves as well. The channel's a little bit narrower here and the mountains are steeper, so I think the wind is really channeling through and getting sucked upwards, pulling us with it. We're noticing that the color of the water is starting to change, so it's a little bit more turquoise due to the glacial silt. We've got about 6 or 7 more nautical miles to go before we reach the head of Burke Channel, where it branches off to north and south Benedict Arm. North would take us to Bella Coola, and south would take us to Tally-Ho Hot Springs. I think we're itching for a little hot spring, hot soak.
We're going south.
I think we're going to take the south route and head to the South Springs for a little bit before we continue north to reprovision. Feeling up there? Yeah, feel that. The Sea States building?
Mainsail's already got the center on it. It's already tensioned and everything.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. There it goes. There you go. Pull it in.
Back to making lunch.
Thanks, Al.
Between the back and forth of running up into the cockpit and helping James with sail changes, I'm down here making some burritos. I had to use up some mushrooms, carrots, salsa, and stuff like that, as well as our cheese. So I sauteed some mushrooms and onions, threw in some carrots and peppers, some spices. They are vegetarian burritos, so they're made with black beans. At first I was like, oh no, I overpacked these burritos and I didn't think I was gonna be able to roll them, but I managed to. They are huge, but my thinking is we can sort of eat half, and then in a few hours when we're hungry again, we can eat the other half. That way, that minimizes my time down here in the galley, sloshing from side to side and leaving James up at the helm by himself.
Oh.
This is amazing, like the color of the water.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Just get through this little squall.
That is gusty.
Wait, pull the main sheet up a little bit.
More? It's weird, you're getting a weird wind up top. Yeah. Do you want me to just furl that in?
Yeah, sure, it's filled in.
Wow, I had just finished eating my burrito and James and I were talking about putting the drone up because it was so calm and we were going wing on wing. And then all of a sudden a huge gust came, hit the boat, the main slashed over, the preventer line flew out of the winch. All the stuff on the port side of the boat hit the starboard, including the rest of my burrito.
We didn't really get them down, but we did put the rails in the water.
We did.
The wind basically did like a, I'd say like 120-degree shift, and instead of coming up Burke Channel, it came all of a sudden from this little thunder system building over the mountain here and came down straight out of the north and basically hit the boat wing on wing, flipped the main back over, and buried the rails.
think that's a really good reminder not to be complacent in these places. I mean, you're getting winds rushing down from the mountains. There's a lot of different systems that build over these mountain peaks, and yeah, you just have to be ready for anything. Really.
Yeah. We got lucky on that one, but we got to keep on our wares.
We're not in Kansas anymore.
Nope. But we are now traveling at 6.5 knots with the wind on a beam directly up the next channel, so hey. We've been getting some real spicy gusts coming down off this little bit of weather, so we just put the first reef in the main just in case they get a little bit intense. We decided this time, just because it was a little bit windier, that we'd just roll in the head sail, put the motor on, put the boat up into irons properly so that we can tie the reef in nice and securely while we had good control of the boat. So we did that, we let the main sheet back out, turned back downwind, and now we're sailing 4.5 knots downwind again on the first reef without the head sail out, so still making good gains.
James and I just checked the updated weather forecast because we are at the head of Burke Channel deciding whether we want to go north or south. Marine forecasts really aren't very accurate for up here at the head of these inlets, so we just checked the forecast for Bella Coola, which is the nearest closest city or town, and it said for tomorrow they're expecting thunder showers sort of all day with 20-kilometer-an-hour winds gusting to 40. So 40 is a little bit steep. We assume that if it's going to be gusting like that up in Bella Coola, it'll likely be the same just south of here in Larson Cove, which is where we wanted to stage ourselves in order to get to the hot springs. We're not familiar with the anchorage in Larson Cove. There's not a lot of information on it. There used to be a logging operation there with a log boom that you could tie up to, but who knows if that's still the case. And we're not quite sure what the holding is like or the swing room, and we don't want to be caught in 40 knots of wind in an anchorage like that. Too many unknowns. So I think we're going to head north up to Bella Coola. We'll position ourselves safely in there, and that way if tomorrow's storm rolls in, we can always put ourselves on the dock, but we're closer to civilization if anything were to go wrong. But yeah, that's some spicy weather in the forecast. We definitely would want to be caught with our pants down in that. So
yeah, if this is like a little thunderstorm, I can only imagine what a system would be like that's twice its size or even bigger. I mean, we're sailing just on the first reef with the main, and we're doing 5.5, 6 knots still. So I think we're better off to go in where we're a little bit more protected, a little bit more safe, and just kind of keep an eye on the weather forecast for the next few days and make a better game plan decision. But I think we're making the right choice by changing plan, avoiding getting stuck down a very remote inlet in a storm. So good on us for changing our minds constantly. Of course, we just flipped around and we're now almost pointing straight up into the wind. We've moved up here into North Bentnick Arm. There was a dramatic change in the water line from larger channel coming up here, and that's where the salt water hits the fresh water, trapping some of the fresh water up here in the arm. And it's just a deeper shade of milky turquoise because it has an increased amount of glacial sediment in it. The wind seems to be funneling straight down South Bentnick, So we would have been sailing hard all the way down to Lazo, but coming in here is really quite protected and pretty chilled out. There is a little bit of a downdraft wind coming out of the channel, and we were going to try to sail upwind, but we can't get the genoa out at the moment because the UV cover, which you've probably seen by now, has been ripped and has been flapping around like crazy. It somehow wrapped itself around the forestay and is kind of constricting the head sail from coming out when it's furled. So that'll be a job for the morning when hopefully it's calm. We can take a look at the sail and see what the heck's going on there. Bit of a pain in the ass because we can't sail upwind at all without a head sail. So I'm glad that we're going into Bella Coola so that we can deal with some of these problems and fix some of the problems that we're having on the boat to make it sail better. It does look like the Northern Sea Wolf is steaming up our asses. That's the ferry that runs from Port Hardy up to Bella Bella, up to Prince Rupert and then back. It also makes a stop in here at Bella Coola. And yeah, we'll probably be seeing it go by in like 3, 2, 1.
There you go. Nice. Yay. Awesome.
Yay, it's untangled. That thing had like formed a proper slip knot around the mast, so that was no way that was going to come undone on its own. But luckily, it was just within reach of the gaff. So that's fabulous. So now we can take down the sail and clean it all up, cut it off or stitch it back up. Thank you. Laundry time.
We're on the quarantine dock.
You got to paddle everywhere. I mean, you can walk, but this is funner.
Well, we are currently hoofing it into town to get some provisions.
I'm in the frame now. Hey, we're going into town because that gusty wind blew up and it's pretty bumpy down at the anchorage. Or at the marina, I guess.
The forecast was pretty accurate, and that gusty thunderstorm sort of weather did spike up here, so we ended up taking our laundry off the boat rather than leaving it blowing around like that. And we're currently walking the 1.5 kilometers into Bella Coola.
Yeah, there's some thick cumulus clouds building that are moving in, so I reckon we'll get a storm later this afternoon. A ton of whitecaps out on this part of the bay, so I'm sure it's howling further down the channels. So we're glad that we're not down in a bay, anchored up with questionable holding and slightly exposed to the wind. Good choice to come up here to Bella Coola.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're heading into town. Hopefully go see what groceries and knickknacks and fishing supplies they have up here. So we'll catch up with you when we get into town. This is our second day of sewing the UV cover back onto our sail. It's probably been 6 hours or so in the making, and I've sewn probably 2/3 of the sail. So there's parts of the sail where the sail's reinforced and it's like 6 or 7 layers of Dacron thick, and for the life of me I cannot get a needle through it. So because I don't have an awl, I have found this little piece of steel, sharpened one end with the trusty Dremel, blunted the other end, and made a punch so that I can punch holes through many layers of Dacron and then sew up the last little bit of our sail. If you don't have the tool, you make the tool, because you are the tool.
The tool is your brain.
The tool is you. Really handy to have on a boat is a portable Dremel, because you can do so many little jobs with these things. They have cutting discs and grinding discs and sanding discs, and just ultra handy for any small task like making an awl.
Is the Dremel in your top 10 tools box?
Well, I am all of top 10 of my 10 tools, so it's on number 11. We did fix 2 rips that were in the panels of Dacron, so that's been good. And we've sewn down pretty much the entirety of the edge from the top of the sail down to the bottom panel, so almost there. Should be able to finish it up today, and then hopefully it'll be still enough that we can put the sail back up on the forestay.
Thanks for watching, folks. Give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed this one, and don't forget to subscribe if you're new here. And a super big thanks to our newest Patreons, Caroline, Larry, Juan, and Paul. You guys are absolute legends. We'll see you all next week. Cheers.